First Step Ever podcast, and I am Ishani Nigam, your host and producer of the podcast. This podcast is made for all the disruptors around the globe who know that they are made for something, for that one thing, but fear of embarrassment, fear of rejection, the fear itself holds us back at some point in time. But hey, those are the only milestones that if we cross, we are there to take our first steps. So, welcome on this journey with me where I interview people from across the globe so that they can share their story, their challenges, and you know that even you can surpass yours. Well, what are you waiting for? Let's get started. Welcome on My First Step Ever. Here we are again with another amazing soul, a guest speaker, someone who's here to explain that why your own choices in life are so important and why you should always listen to your heart. He did not have a normal trajectory in his career. It was unconventional, and you will understand more about it from going through food technology, IT to career counselor, and now even a book writer. There's lots that he has covered. I'm sure he has a lot for us to share that how did he choose that path, or maybe the path chose him, and how did he take up the challenge. So everyone who's listening to me, please welcome Ralph Snider all the way from Melbourne, Australia. Hi Ralph, welcome on My First Step Ever.
Thanks, Shani. Good to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. And just to give everyone an overview of Ralph, Ralph is a qualified, certified, and experienced career counselor, and also called as career development practitioner, who assists people to search for work. Now, that's very, very important help that you're providing out there. He currently runs a private career counseling practice named Career Genie, and he is a member of the Victorian Government Workplace Incidents Consultative Committee. He's a member of Aspergers Victoria Coaching and Co-Design Committees. Now, he has, I think, a lot of accolades that he has won through his career so far, and he's been a really important figure there, helping shape many lives who are looking for a job, who are looking for the exact work that they would really want to, go out and prepare for. So, how did you manage the transition from school to uni?
Oh, okay. Well, actually, I didn't do very well. I failed at the final year of school and I repeated it. And even when I repeated, I didn't do very well. I had no idea what I wanted to do. In those days, there was no career counselling or very little. Schools, there was virtually no help at all. Maybe if I would have asked, there might have been help, but they certainly didn't tell us. So what I did was I just looked at the courses that I had enough of a score to get into, and because my parents were very strong on education. And when I looked at them, one of the courses, the food science and technology, stood out to me because a lot of chemistry and biology, and I thought that I liked chemistry and biology. Looking back now, I actually was good at and liked maths. That was my thinking at the time, and that's why I chose food science and technology. If I would have done some investigation into it, I would have found out that there's a lot of prac work in it, and I really found prac work very difficult and didn't like it.
Very interesting. So first of all, thank you so much. I think you just started off with being so honest that how you failed your final year, and then you had that the confidence, and that you liked biology, you liked the technology, and you wanted to get into it. And you've also admitted that without any prep work, you just went into it and you just sort of followed what you felt like you might like at that point in time, which is all okay. I think sometimes that's how we learn. But from your own experiences, I think you have given us, our listeners across the globe who are right now probably on the verge of making a choice, that it's really important to sit down and do the prep work, as you just told us, that what it can lead to, and specifically when it is very when we are taking very important decisions. Now, but having said that, I also want to say that your journey is unique. And because it happened that way, Ralph, I think we have you here so that you can share your wisdom, whatever you learned from your journey with our listeners and myself today. So from there, when you thought of going to food technology and you started learning that, studying that, after that, how did you get your first job? Because I think this was something you thought you liked, but that's not how it went, right?
It was interesting because parents have a significant influence on their children, what they do, and there was a job that came up when I was finishing, which was a trainee supervisor at quite a large company, a food company, and I knew it wasn't right for me. I knew that I wasn't wanting to do supervision, but my mum was talked me into it. She said, "Look, they'll train you," and whatever else she said at the time, and I applied for it and I got the job. But like about 9 months later, I was hating the job. It was a lot of physical work plus food plants, but also it was I was really only shadowing. I never they didn't just say, here, here's your plant, you supervise these people. I didn't get to that stage, but I was just shadowing people, and eventually they caught up with me and just sort of said, "Look, we don't think you can be a supervisor." And they organised for me to attend a psychological battery of testing, and which took most of the day. Actually, it's quite comprehensive. Then when I went back to them the following week to review the results. It was pretty obvious to me that IT I had a strong aptitude for it, and that really I didn't have much of an aptitude for food technology. And as I drove away, I can still remember I was driving away thinking somehow I'm going to get into IT. I don't know. I guess it was just
Your inner voice.
the results. The results that no, it was the results that talked me into it.
Right. Ralph, what's so beautiful right now that you have shared something which a lot of people dread sharing with, even with themselves, which is, that your supervisor came up and they told you upfront that they think that you might be fit for another sort of job, but not the one that you're doing at that point in time. So before we move in and ask you the questions that I'm really interested to ask you in your journey, I like to stop here, kind of pause and ask this question: that how did you deal with that particular conversation? Like when that happened, how did you feel and deal with that? Because being in that situation, someone saying this to your face, I mean, you do know that yes, you might lack something, but having to go through the situation in a professional setting, it's very demotivating. How did you deal with that?
Actually, I actually lied to the guy. The guy said to me, "I don't think you can do it." The production manager, and I just lied and said I thought I could. And he's like, "Okay, we'll organise a week for you to team lead in a plant." But then he must have spoken to maybe a senior manager or a HR person, who then obviously decided, well, no, we'll give him this psychological battery of tests instead.
Yeah.
When I found that out, that I was better suited to IT and that the other thing wasn't good, that I wasn't going to, supervision wasn't right for me, I had a meeting with the HR person and the senior manager, and I didn't wait for them to tell me. I just said to them, I basically pulled the pin. Because I could see it was hopeless, and they were good about it. They said, "Look, you can stay on in this role for as long as you want, and this other role for as long as you want." I was doing sort of a quality testing role, and that allowed me to transition into IT.
This is a really interesting, piece of story over here, Ralph, because I think the number of situations that take place in a life, and you sharing one of the situations, which was a bit tricky, but that was a good learning point for you at that point in time, and for a lot of us who are listening to us right now, that now you might know that it's really good for your own sake that you understand that what you are really inclined towards, and probably try that out. And I think, as I am saying, your journey is your journey, and I love that you're owning up to it and you're sharing it with us. And probably that's how you went ahead and then you experimented with something that you had liking towards, which was IT. From there, I would like to know that how did you transition into a career counselor? You felt that IT was something that you liked, but then we just into career counseling.
Just before we do, I'll just mention one thing. So, for people who don't know what they want to do, I think a career assessment is a good option. There are free ones around online you can find, and others that don't cost too much. And it can help a person who doesn't know what they want to do to become better aware of their interests. For most people, especially in Australia, interest is what drives a person's occupational choice. For some people, it's values like I want to make a lot of money, or I don't want to work weekends, or I want a job close to home, or I want to help disadvantaged people. I think I'll become a social worker. So, but for most people, interests, and for some people, values. In something like Hong Kong, it's quite different. How can I make more money? Which occupation will allow me to make a lot of money? And some people, when I did my careers education and development graduate diploma, some people they talked about two ways of choosing: judging and picking. Judging is where you might look at a whole list of occupations, you make a short list, you go into detail looking online for information, you speak to people, you eventually make a decision. Whereas picking is just like, oh, I think I know what it's like to be a hairdresser, I want to be a hairdresser. And there's no right or wrong. It's just a different way that people choose to make a choice. I remember one client I had not long ago, she was waiting, she was very spiritual, and she was waiting for a sign like in a dream to tell her what to do. So everyone has a different. But yeah, to get back to now, your how did I transition into career counselling? Yeah, okay. I had a workplace injury, overuse using the keyboard. I did a lot of treatment. I found out a whole lot of things. Eventually, it took years. I got back into the work, but then had a further issue with it. And eventually I decided, look, I have to choose something else. And I was looking in the paper in those days, job ads in the paper, and I was looking at things like car salesman and real estate sales. And I realized that wasn't right for me, but I didn't know what else to look at. I saw this job for an employment consultant. And because I'd gone through career transition when I'd left the organisation I spent 18 years at in IT, skilled me up on job search and networking, how to access the job market, cover letters, the whole thing. I sort of found that very interesting, and that's what interested me in the employment consultant role. And I rang them, but they thought I was some sort of job seeker, and they put me onto Centrelink. And when
Oh,
I spoke to Centrelink, they said, because you've got a disability, we'll send you to disability employment provider. So I went there, and they went through all the admin, and then they said to me, you got any idea what you wanted to do? And so I pulled out this ad, this employment consultant ad, and they had someone else there who had worked in disability employment. She came and had a chat with me, and that's what interested me. Then I sort of found I sat next to someone in IT who was in a wheelchair, and when I wasn't in a normal role because of my injury, I was actually looking after someone. Well, part of my role was looking after someone who had an aneurysm and was needing some help. So I sort of used that to help me. So I ended up a disability employment consultant. That's how I did it. And from that, my interest as a disability employment consultant, I then did the graduate diploma in careers education and development.
there are such amazing takeaways from your journey, Ralph. I like one thing very particularly, and I want to highlight this, that your never giving up attitude despite of all odds that you have faced so far. And I hope that you're doing well out there. You are still there in the game, and you're trying new things, you're experimenting with new different avenues that you had never thought of, something that you picked on in the career that you really wanted, which was IT. During your IT career that you had, you picked few things, and according to the situation that you had with your health, you try to gain the best out of whatever was possible for you. You tried from your end and you got something that really helped you fall in love with the career. So first of all, thank you so much, Ralph. For everyone who's listening to us, I think this is the first takeaway that you must have, that never give up attitude. Find the most optimum solution in the given situation that you have, and you will eventually be able to pull out experiences that you have had so far in any of the fields that you work, and put into those transferable skills into a new career where you want to go ahead. So thank you so much for taking us through your journey. But we have just arrived at how you became the career counselor. So now you have your own practice, your own business. Would you like to talk us through?
Yeah, sure. I should mention, just to the key word that what you're talking about now is persistence, and
That's
I
right.
think that persistence is very important for people. It's much more important than intelligence. You don't have to be intelligent to do a university degree. You just need to be persistent. Well, what happened was I was working as a disability employment consultant, and after I did about how many? I did a few years, and I changed company a few times, and the work started to become the level of management was pretty poor. The work became very bureaucratic, a lot of paperwork. The government, because you've got a contract with the government and there's a lot of paperwork involved. And eventually I just didn't want to do it anymore. And so I looked around to see what else I could do, and spoke with someone in careers, as an experienced lady, and she said, why don't you do occupational rehabilitation, working with people with in work cover or TAC injuries. And she said, you'll be working with professionals anyway. I ended up investigating. I spoke to a couple of people. I got a job in it. But I found it was totally different to what I thought. It was all report writing. Here I was not wanting to do a lot of typing, and suddenly I'm in a job that's all report writing. Anyway, I managed to survive the job for 20 months before it offended my values, the way in which people were treated in that area, and looked around for something else. I quit without another job to go to because I couldn't stand it any longer. I was working very long hours trying to do all these reports. So I ended up getting a job with a company that supported My Future, which is Australia's careers website, and I updated the labour market information. And then once that finished, it was just a 15-month contract, decided I wanted to get into career counselling at a university. And what I did was I had a mentor from the Association of Australia who was working at a university who helped me, and she suggested I join the National Association of, it's called NAGCAS, National Association of Graduate Career Advisory Services, and I went along to their professional development functions. And one of the people I met there, so it was networking. When I went, had coffee with them because they were a science career counsellor, and I was going for a job as a science career counsellor. I didn't get that job, but then a job came up where this girl worked, and she must have put in a good word for me. And I worked in Monash for 10 months, which was
I can definitely vouch for this. So I think working in the renowned universities in Australia is something that it's a very well reputed, I would say so. And career counseling is taken very seriously in universities in Australia. And I, being on one end of the receiving end of it, I can say that it is a very useful service that the universities provide. So I'm very sure that when you were the one providing the career counseling services, the students must have really, really taken really good direction out of it and went ahead. So on that note, now that we know your amazing story, Ralph, starting off from your food technology to IT, successful IT career, to kind of, navigating through the uncertain situations, and yet, coming into a profession that really resonated with you, to coming to this place where you have your own practice, coaching practice now. We would love to hear top 3 tips that you want to tell us for our audiences, that when they're looking out for job, they must not do these 3 things, because I'm sure they will get to read a lot in your book that what they should be doing. So let us kind of sum up this episode with what they should not be doing?
People include everything in their cover letter that they've ever done in their lives, their working lives, whereas really they just need to include what is relevant for the job they're applying for. That's one thing. The second thing is poorly answered key selection criteria. A lot of people don't write them very well, and so that's the second thing. And if they use the STAR technique, which is a STAR model, which is situation, task, action, result. I'll say that again: situation, task, action, and result. It's the STAR model for answering those sort of questions. I think then they would have a better chance of finding work. The other thing people don't do is they don't access the hidden job market. It's about 20% of all jobs, and they're sitting there on their computers. It's very easy to send off applications to jobs that are on Seek or whatever, or whichever, knocking on, contacting employers, contacting friends, relatives, ex-colleagues who may know of a job which might come up is more challenging, but can give you an edge because most people don't do it. So it gives you a higher chance. Whereas online, you've got hundreds of people responding to a job ad. It's very challenging.
Thank you so much, Ralph. Those 3 points were amazing. And I think it's really important to know what not to do, because those are the few things that everyone does. And for everyone who's listening to us today, I'm sure that you want to know a bit more about Ralph because of his unique personality that he has brought through today. I'm really so happy to know his journey, and he's been so honest and candid throughout the episode. If you want to connect with him, read more about him, I will leave his LinkedIn link on in the show notes below. So thank you so much, Ralph, for being on my first step ever. And I always request my guest speakers to leave our listeners with a quote or a saying that they resonate with.
Yeah, I did look one up. Nothing is permanent about our behaviour patterns except our belief that they are so.
Wow, this is so profound. I think someone really needs to kind of sit down, listen to this quote again and again, and really understand to the core of what it really means. Thank you so much, Ralph, for being on my first step ever. It was a pleasure to chat with you and to really understand your perspective and the challenges, the way that you have faced them. And you bring such a positive and a calm vibe when I'm speaking to you. And I'm so happy that you were able to make it. So thank you so much for being on my first step ever.
It's a real pleasure, Ashani. Thank you. I've enjoyed it. It's interesting for me to reflect on my career as well. One thing I would say is that on my shop page, careergenie.net.au, as it's in Career Genie, GENIE, careergenie.net.au /shop. I've got some two free giveaways. One is how to write cover letters. One is just some career thoughts. You can actually buy my book also if you desire through that website as well.
Amazing. So if you're interested, I will leave the link below as well in the podcast show notes and even the YouTube description. So thank you so much again, Ralph, for being on my first step ever. And until next time, start believing in yourself and keep believing in yourself. If you're still glued together on this episode, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And if you really want to hear more such stories from around the globe, then subscribe to my First Step Ever podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google, and Spotify, whichever platform you prefer. Please do give ratings and please do write your comments. And you can directly reach out to me on my First Step Ever _IN. That's my Instagram handle. A little about myself. I have always loved performing on stage, acting, speaking, and just emoting myself. So I use these mediums different ways so that I can connect with people, help them, empower them, infotain them, which is to inform them and entertain them. If you would like to collaborate for any opportunities, more than welcome to connect with me on my Instagram handle. Thank you.